Hello friends, I am Dr. Jessie, your community medicine faculty. Today we are going to discuss all the questions which came from community medicine in INI CET 2020 exam. This is going to be a very important session because every year we are expecting a few repeat MCQs, right? Moreover, in this session, we will be discussing not only the question answers which came in INI CET, but all those MCQs in and around those questions and the topics related to that particular question. So, this is going to be like a quick revision of all the subjects in community medicine or all the topics in community medicine. So, you can revise the things that you have already learned. So, shall we start? We'll start with the first question. You are medical officer at a PHC. What will be your advice regarding an economical method for mass drug administration for iron deficiency anemia in your catchment area? And the options are A. Ferrous sulfate, B. Intravenous iron, C. Ferrous fumarate, folic acid, vitamin B12, vitamin C complex, and D is iron hydroxide polymaltose complex. So, what is your answer? Now, to pick the most appropriate answer, let's see what MDA is and what are the principles based on which MDA works. After that, you will correctly pick the answer for sure. MDA, as you can guess, mass drug administration means you are administering a particular drug to everyone. To the mass means to everyone in the population, irrespective of their disease status. Okay. So, without any individual diagnosis, you are giving mass drug to a population. Now, this works on certain principles. First one, this should be for a disease which is prevalent in that population. Yes, iron deficiency is prevalent in our area. Without individual diagnosis that we have already seen, it should be like a preventive chemotherapy. Keep this point in your mind. Next, it should be a drug which is safe and easy to administer. Okay, no tedious process involved. And it should be inexpensive. Okay, so keep last 3 points in your mind and then pick the answer. So, which is going to be your answer? Ferrous sulfate. Is it not? What about B, IV, that means intravenous iron? It's not that easy to administer. Giving injection to each and every person in the population is not that easy. What about C? This is a very good complex, but it is expensive. You can't do that. And what about D? This is actually given for the treatment of iron deficiency, not for anemia. Okay, so this is entirely different molecule. So, the answer is A. Moving on to the rest of the MCQs from this particular topic. First MCQ, which is the MDA program we have in India. It is filariasis, right? Second MCQ, what is the drug of choice in filariasis MDA? It is single dose DEC and albendazole. Third MCQ, what is the mechanism of action here? You know, in filaria endemic areas, microfilaria will be present in the blood of people living in that area without any overt symptoms. The problem is, though they don't show any symptoms, they can transmit disease to another person, because when mosquito bites that person, microfilaria will be picked up and that will be given to another person. So, people living in that area will be having microfilaria in their blood. What DEC does here is, DEC will kill all the microfilaria, and albendazole has got little action. It has some action on the adult worm. Okay. How frequently you give it? That is the next MCQ. You give it every year, right? You give it annually, every year. Next MCQ, for how long? It is given for 5 to 6 years. Now, the question is why you are giving it for 5 to 6 years. This corresponds to the reproductive span of the adult worm. If at all one adult worm is there in the body, it can produce microfilaria only for 5 years. That is why you are giving it continuously for 5 to 6 years in an area. Next MCQ, what are the contraindications, or for which all groups you don't give MDA in filariasis? There are mainly 3 groups. First is children less than 2 years. Okay, children less than 2 years. Second, pregnant women. Pregnancy is a contraindication. And third is those having serious illness. Those having some serious illness, you don't give. Okay. Next question. How do you give it? That means the dose. Albendazole, nothing to worry, it is 400 milligram. To whoever you are giving one 400 milligram tablet. Now the difference comes in DEC distribution, because DEC is available as 100 milligram tab. Now let's see how to give it. For less than 2 years, you don't give at all. Those coming between 2 to 5 years, children between 2 to 5 years, you are giving one tablet of 100 milligram. Now for 6 to 14 years, you are giving 2 tablets, that means 200 milligram, and those above 15 years, you are giving 3 tablets of DEC. Okay, that means 300 milligram. This also should be in your mind. This is also another MCQ. Okay, moving on to the next. What is the drug of choice for MDA in countries which are co-endemic with onchocerciasis? That means filariasis plus onchocerciasis is prevalent in certain areas. So, in those places, which is a drug of choice? It is slightly different. You are giving albendazole, of course. It is albendazole plus, are we giving DEC? No, we are giving some other drug which is equally good for onchocerciasis and filariasis. Which is that? That is MCQ. Ivermectin. You are giving ivermectin. Okay, single dose. This is also given as single dose. This is how you give it. Okay. Now let's see. Is there any other MDA program we have in India other than filariasis? Think, do we have? Yes, we have one more, which is biannual deworming to remove intestinal helminths. Okay, biannually to everyone we are giving, to children, especially to children in school, we are giving albendazole 400 milligram, right? That brings you to a very important MCQ. When is National Deworming Day in India? We have a National Deworming Day in India. Do you know that? When is it? That is a question. It is February 10th. February 10th is the National Deworming Day in India. And what is this year's theme? Make every child worm free on National Deworming Day. That is 2021 theme. Okay. And after that, you are giving it on August. Okay, on 10th of August. But National Deworming Day is Feb. It's biannual, so you are also giving it in August. Okay. Now let's see MDA globally. Which are the diseases for which MDA is available at the international level? Filariasis, of course, it is there. Like we have for malaria in African countries, they have MDA. For onchocerciasis, which we have already discussed, for schistosomiasis, and for trachoma, and helminths, which we have already discussed. So these are the MDA programs we have at the international level. Okay. Moving on to the last from MDA. What are the side effects? MDA is of course good, but it's not free of any side effects. There are mainly 2 side effects. One is drug toxicity. It may not be acting the same in everyone, right? Drug toxicity is possible, and second is drug resistance. That is another side effect of giving MDA. Okay, so these are the MCQs from MDA. And we have also discussed National Deworming Day. Next question. A woman with recurrent trichomoniasis infection was advised pap smear. She is asking you, what is it? What will be your answer? So what is PAPS test or pap smear taken for? It is for screening cervical cancer, right? No doubt about it. Now let's see few more MCQs related to this topic. PAP test, as you know, is Papinicola test, used for cervical cancer screening. This will pick cancerous as well as precancerous lesions. Next MCQ. When to start doing PAPS test? You have to start doing it from 20 to 25 years. Okay, between 20 to 25 is the ideal time to start. And most of the countries are starting it at 21 years. Okay, next question. How frequently you do it? You do it every 3 to 5 years. That is the answer. Next question. How long can you do it, or how long you should be doing it? Till what age? 65 years. So you start doing it at 21 years, do it every 3 to 5 years, and you can do it till 65 years. Next MCQ, when to stop. First one we have already discussed, you can stop once you reach 65 years. So, more than 65 years, you can stop. Is there any other condition other than this? Yes. Second condition where you don't have to continue doing pap smear is after total hysterectomy. After doing total hysterectomy, there is no need to do pap smear, right? Logical. Third, after diagnosing one condition, which is that carcinoma endometrium, CA endometrium. Now, what happens here? Once the patient develops carcinoma endometrium, pap smear can give false positive result. It can give false positive result, so it won't be reliable anymore. Is it clear? Next, I am going to ask you a $1 million question. The question is, after taking HPV vaccine, do you need to continue doing pap smear or can you stop it? After HPV vaccine, after taking HPV vaccine, what is your answer? You have to continue doing pap smear, continue pap smear, continue pap. Why? Because HPV vaccine will not cover all cancer causing HPV viruses. It covers only few viruses, right? So, that is not going to give you 100% protection. So, continue pap smear. Are you with me? So, only these three are the indications where you have to stop. Okay. Now, let us see frequently asked few other MCQs regarding screening of certain conditions. For breast cancer, what is the screening tool? Breast self-examination and mammography. For prostate cancer, which is the screening tools used? PSA and digital rectal examination. Next MCQ. For oral cancer, go to the doctor and do biannual oral examination. Okay. For colorectal cancer, which is a screening tool? FOB, fecal occult blood examination and stool DNA testing. This is also available. This is also another screening tool we have for colorectal cancer screening. Fetal developmental anomaly. Yes, alpha fetoprotein or AFP. And for diabetes mellitus, we have blood and urine sugar examination. So, each of this is an MCQ which I think you knew already. You know all this, right? These are simple but very important MCQs. Moving on to the next MCQ from this topic, which is the most common neonatal disorder screen. I know I'm taking MCQs, I have collected MCQs from various topics which are important related to what we are discussing. Most common neonatal disorder screened in children. It is congenital hypothyroidism. That is also an MCQ, congenital hypothyroidism. Another screening that you do in neonate is phenylketonuria. Okay, most common is this one, phenylketonuria is also done. Moving on to few more MCQs from the chapter screening. Okay, usefulness of a screening test is given by, these are frequently asked MCQs. Usefulness of a screening test is given by sensitivity. Sensitivity. By the way, what is sensitivity? Ability to detect all those who have the disease. Of course, that is the use of a screening test. You should be able to pick as many diseases as possible, right? Second MCQ from that chapter, screening test should be more sensitive. The options would be sensitive, specific, positive predictive value, negative predictive value. So, screening test should be more sensitive. Whereas, confirmatory test should be more specific. Okay. That is another MCQ. Okay, so tests with high specificities are the ones which are usually applied as confirmatory test on those who were tested to be positive by the first test. See, first would be a test that has got high sensitivity. Okay, so that will pick as many diseases as possible, and on those who were tested to be positive by the first test, you apply a second test, as in the case of ELISA and Western blot. Okay, you apply the second test which is more specific. Are you with me? That is what I want to tell you. Okay, and there is an easy way to remember this. Just think about the fourth letter in sensitivity and specificity. What is this fourth letter in sensitivity? It is S, right? Sensitive. So, it is for screening. Which is the fourth letter in specificity? It is C. That means confirmatory. Easy to remember, right? Okay. Moving on to next. Diagnostic power of a screening test is given by another frequent MCQ. Predictive accuracy. Predictive accuracy. Predictive accuracy means predictive value. Okay, so diagnostic power of a positive screening test is given by positive predictive value. Diagnostic power of a negative screening test is given by negative predictive value. Okay, positive predictive value is directly proportional to prevalence of the disease. Prevalence of the disease. As the prevalence increases, positive predictive value increases. As prevalence decreases in an area, positive predictive value will also decrease. Next MCQ. Screening is coming under which level of prevention? You know, levels of preventions are 4 in number. You have primordial, primary, secondary and tertiary. Now, what is primordial? You are doing at the very first stage where you are trying to prevent risk factors, emergence of risk factors in a community where it has not yet evolved. So, what you do there is, you call it as mode of intervention. I am going to write it as mode of intervention, MOI, mode of intervention. What you do there is health education. Okay. Now, what is primary? Primary is what you do once the risk factors emerge, but you are trying to prevent the disease. So, you are preventing disease in the presence of risk factors. Prevent disease from occurring even though risk factors are arrived. What you do there is, the mode of intervention is specific protection and health promotion. Health promotion means you are trying to promote the health, general health, by asking people to take good food, asking them to do regular exercise. So, you are trying to prevent as many diseases as possible, whereas in specific protection, you are trying to specifically prevent one disease alone. The example would be giving vaccination or giving vitamin A prophylaxis. So, these are coming under primary levels of prevention. Third is secondary. By the way, both secondary and tertiary you do after the disease develops. Now, what is the difference? Secondary is given in the early pathogenesis phase. Here you are intervening in the early pathogenesis phase. That means the disease has just started and the patient is still in the reversible phase. Okay. And here what you do is, you are trying to give a normal life to the patient at the early pathogenesis phase. So, you are trying to pick the disease at the earliest and start treatment. So, the modes of interventions are screening, early diagnosis and giving treatment. Early diagnosis and giving treatment. So, these are the mode of interventions that you do in secondary. Now, what is tertiary? In tertiary, you are intervening at the late pathogenesis phase. That is the MCQ. You are intervening at the late pathogenesis phase. Now, whatever you do, however you try, you will not be able to give a normal life to the patient like you did in secondary. Here, what you can do to the maximum is, you can prevent further disability and you can rehabilitate the patient. So, the modes of intervention that you do under tertiary are disability limitation, and rehabilitation. So, each of this is an MCQ, okay, rehabilitation. So, modes of interventions are important and these are also very important. So, what is the answer? By the way, we were talking about this particular thing. Screening, early diagnosis and treatment is coming under secondary level. So, this is secondary prevention. Okay. Next question. Advantage gained by screening, a sure question. It is lead time. That brings you to the next question. What is lead time? Let me try to explain it using an example. Imagine that a particular disease is starting in the year 2015. Okay, the disease or the pathogenesis starts in 2015. Pathogenesis is starting. You know, immediately after the pathogenesis, symptoms will not develop. Symptoms are developing in the year, say, 2020. And the usual time of diagnosis is after 5 years in 2020. And the patient, once develops symptoms, will get diagnosed by usual diagnostic test. So, diagnostic test is picking him in the year 2020. Is it clear? Now, what is screening? You are trying to pick the disease even before the symptoms develop. But after a point where it is possible to be detected by screening. Suppose we are doing a screening in the year say 2018, and the patient was diagnosed by your screening test, in the year 2018. So, how many years ahead, how many years before the usual diagnostic test are you picking your disease using the screening test? 2 years. So, 2 years ahead of usual diagnostic test, your screening test could pick the disease, right? So, this 2 years is the lead time. These 2 years you call as lead time. That is the extra advantage that you gained by your screening test over the usual diagnostic test. Are you with me? So, these are also very important. You can even expect a picture like this to calculate what is the lead time there. Then you should be able to understand the difference between your usual diagnostic test and screening test. That time is the lead time. So, this is an image based question as well. And another frequently asked question like this. So, we have discussed almost all questions from this topic. Third question, HPV vaccine is based on A. E1 E2, B. E6 E7, C. E7, D. L1 L2. So, what is the answer? At least for a few, this question would be like French and Latin. You might be thinking, what is this E and L? It's not something which we always learn. Moreover, I think this is a topic which is very important in INI CET, because last year 2 questions came from this particular topic. First one you had seen was regarding carcinoma cervix screening. Now they are asking about the prevention. So, let us discuss everything without fail from this topic. Now, let us see what is this E and L. E is nothing but early protein, okay, and L is nothing but late protein. You know, these are proteins produced by viruses. That brings you to the next question, what is early and what is late protein? Early proteins are produced by the virus after entering the host cell, but before replication. Before replication inside the host cell. Whereas late protein, now you can guess, that is produced after the virus starts replicating, after replication. So, that is your early and late protein, or E and L, that is it. Now, coming to HPV, HPV is also a virus that can also produce E and L. The E protein that is produced by our HPV is E1 to E7. There are 7. Whereas L, the major ones are, or there are mainly 2 late proteins produced by HPV, which is involved in its capsid formation, which are L1 and L2. L1 is known as major and L2 is known as minor protein. Now, the question was, which among this is involved in vaccine formation, or inside the vaccine, which among this is present? For that, you should know the difference between E and L. You know, L protein can prevent the infection. So, all the prophylactic vaccines which contain all the prophylactic vaccines in HPV has got L1 and L2, because L1 and L2 prevent infection. So, the vaccines are made of L1 and L2. So, the answer is L1 and L2. Now, I want to tell you one more thing which may confuse you little more. Here the answer is L1 and L2. Why I said prophylactic vaccine is, you might be thinking all vaccines are prophylactic. All vaccines are not prophylactic. There are certain therapeutic vaccines as well, but they are under trial. Okay, and even for HPV there is a therapeutic vaccine, and it is said that once you take this vaccine, again under trial condition, it is said that it can reduce the size of the tumor. And in therapeutic vaccines which are not in use, therapeutic vaccines, it contain E proteins. Okay, don't bother, here the answer is L1 and L2, because we are talking about prophylactic vaccines. But keep it in your mind, we have prophylactic as well as therapeutic vaccines. Now, regarding the HPV schedule and dose. HPV is given in which age group? From 9 to 26, which is again divided into, the first group is 9 to 14 years. In that, you are giving 2 doses of HPV vaccine. And what is the schedule? 0 and then the second dose within 6 to 12 months. So, you can remember 0-6. Whereas, in the age group 15 to 26, you are giving 3 doses. And how do you give it? How is it scheduled? 0, 1, 6, like we give our hepatitis B vaccine. Okay. And the third point which I have written here, if a person who is coming in the age group 9 to 14 is immunocompromised, then that person should be given 3 doses series. Is that clear? So, this is also a very, very important MCQ. Okay. Now, let us see which are the vaccines available. This is not a new MCQ. This came in year before that, in 2019 NEET entrance exam. Okay. So, let us go through that as well. We have mainly 3 HPV vaccines. One is bivalent, second is quadrivalent, and the third is nonavalent. Okay, this nonavalent was a previous MCQ, so it's not new. You can expect again similar questions from HPV vaccines. Now, bivalent, it is against 2 HPV types which are 16 and 18, and it is given for females between 9 to 25. Quadrivalent, the name is Gardasil. It contains, quadri means 4. So, along with 16 and 18, this also contains 6 and 11, which can cause genital wart. So, this can also be given for males. Okay, that means for boys, because this can prevent genital wart. Whereas 16 and 18 is CS cervix, so that you need to give only for females. Whereas quadrivalent can be given for boys and girls, see, males and females in the same age group 9 to 26, and you know how to give it as 1, 2 dose or 3 dose, that we have already discussed. And coming to the previous question, Gardasil 9, the question was nonavalent vaccine. Which among the following HPV type is not present in nonavalent vaccine against HPV? That was the question year before last. So, let us see which are the HPV types which are present in Nona. Nona means 9. So, there are 9 HPV types. This covers, or this gives protection against 9 HPV types. Apart from those 4 that we have discussed, which is 18, 16, 18, then 6, 11. This also has 31, 33, 45, 52 and 58. The answer in that particular question was 32. Which among the following is not present? See, 31 is there, 33 is there, no 32. That was the answer in previous MCQ. Okay. So, that covers all the questions from HPV. And recently they have taken out this one, that means bivalent vaccine from US, because we have better ones. And as per the recent evidence, they are only using Gardasil 9. Nonavalent is the one they are now using in US. The last question, what is the dose? It is given as 0.5 ml intramuscular. That is how you give it. Okay. So, everything from HPV vaccine and CS cervix, screening, all those things we have discussed, and I hope you are with me. Next question. You will sanitize your hands under the following conditions: before examining the patient, after examining the patient, after touching the patient's surroundings, when you see your hands are visibly soiled. So, what is the answer? Multiple responses are possible, but will you choose all 4? Are you saying yes? I am telling you no. Only 3 responses you can choose. So, which are they? You can sanitize your hand under 5 conditions or under 5 moments. 2 before doing something and 3 after doing. Now, let us see before. When will you sanitize your hand? First, before touching the patient. Second, before doing any procedure on the patient, which should be aseptic. So, these are 2 conditions where you sanitize hand beforehand. That means before touching the patient, before doing any aseptic procedure on the patient. Now, after, I said 3. Which are they? After touching any patient, after touching patient's surrounding, after touching patient's body fluids. So, which are those 3 after moments? After touching patient, after touching patient's surroundings, after coming in contact with patient's fluids, body fluids. Okay, so that is what is given in this picture. Okay, whereas you shouldn't be sanitizing but washing your hand with soap and water when your hands are visibly dirty or soiled with blood or other body fluids. Don't sanitize, go and wash your hands. Okay. After using toilet, don't sanitize, but better you wash your hands. Exposure to potential spore forming pathogens is strongly suspected. Again, there you wash your hands. Okay. So what is the answer? Answer is A, B, C. When you see your hands are visibly soiled, WHO is saying go and wash your hands and not sanitize. Okay. Now, few more MCQs related to this, which was last year NEET exam question regarding the steps in donning and doffing. Okay. We thought pandemic was going on during that time, that is why we got that question, and we thought that's the end, but pandemic is continuing, so we can expect further questions from the same topic, donning and doffing. Which are the 4 main steps? First, you have to put on your glove. So, glove first. Sorry, not glove, I said gown. Gown first. Though I was showing gown, I was saying glove. It is gown first. Okay. Then, after putting gown, put on your respirator. After that, protect your eyes. So, this eye protection. Still, your hands are not clean, so you put the glove last. Okay. So, this is the order of donning. By the way, what do you mean by donning? Donning means putting on PPE, personal protective equipments, and the opposite of that is doffing. That means, how do you remove your PPE after seeing the patient? Which is the most contaminated part? Which would be the most contaminated part? Your hands. Okay. So, you first remove the glove. Starting with glove. We put glove the last, but we are removing glove first. What is next? Then you remove your gown. Then your eye protection. By the way, one thing I forgot, after removing the glove, you have to use the hand rub. Okay. After that only you go on removing the rest. Eye protection, then respirator, that means your mask. Respirator, because you want that mask on till the last, till you completely remove everything, you want the mask on. After that, you can wash your hand. After that, you wash your hand. So, after removing the glove, you use some rub, then you do the rest, and once you are finished, you wash your hand. So, these are the steps in donning and doffing, which you can expect this year as well. Okay, are you with me? What I told you was CDC guideline. Different books are giving different guideline, but you stick on to something which is international. Next question. A 2-year-old child who is a case of nephrotic syndrome has to be put on steroids. Before starting treatment, which of the following is or are true about vaccination? Here also multiple responses are possible. Vaccinate as per schedule. What do you think? Yes, you have to vaccinate as per schedule. Give pneumococcal vaccine as per schedule. That is also something that you should do before starting a child on nephrotic treatment, because once you start giving treatment, to be very specific, 2 mg per kg for more than 14 days, the child will become immunocompromised. After that, the child is very likely to develop pneumococcal infection. So, it is said that before starting the child on treatment, better you give pneumococcal vaccine. So, that is also correct. So, we have 2 answers. Now, what about only kill vaccines to be given? Once the child become immunocompromised, yes, only kill vaccines should be given. But here the question is before starting treatment. It is said that before starting treatment, you give as many live vaccines as possible. Even they say that you can give chickenpox vaccine, you can give so many other vaccines, because once become immunocompromised, when he or she becomes immunocompromised, there is a high chance that they may get chickenpox as well, right? So, you give as many live vaccines as possible before you start treatment. OPV not given to siblings, nothing like that. So, the answer is A and B. Now, let us see the MCQs from pneumococcal vaccine. We have 2 types of pneumococcal vaccines. Which are they? First is PPV23. PPV23, which is against 23 serotypes, and the second is PCV30, Now, what is the full form of PPV23? It is pneumococcal polysaccharide vaccine. Pneumococcal polysaccharide. There are two C, okay. I may miss, but you read it correctly. Pneumococcal polysaccharide vaccine, and PCV is pneumococcal conjugate vaccine, which is covering 13 types, serotypes. Now, you may think that giving 23 is the best because it has got more coverage, but studies are showing that in children, PCV is giving long lasting protection. It reduces pneumococcal transmission and it is giving more protection compared to PV23 in children. So, what I want to tell you is, in children, for primary immunization, we are giving PCV 13. That is the next MCQ. Primary immunization is given with PCV 13 and not with PPV 23. Okay, now let's see what is the schedule of PCV vaccine in children. What do we give is PCV 13 that we have already discussed. The schedule is, it's given as 3 doses. Okay, first 2, like you give IPV. How do you give IPV? 6th week, 14th week. Okay, so this is also like IPV. So you will remember IPV schedule as well. 6th and 14th. Usually we say 6, 10, 14. Here no 10. 6th, 14th week, and another dose or the third booster dose between 9th and 12th month. Better to give it along with, as per the schedule, it is given along with the measles vaccine or MR vaccine in 9th month, 9th completed month. Okay, so 6, 14 and 9 month. Okay, this is how you give the primary immunization. Now the question is, what if the child is developing nephrotic syndrome and you are about to start this child on steroid? How do you schedule the rest of the vaccination? If the child is, or if that child has not taken primary immunization, then you start PCV 13, then after 8 weeks, you give PPV 23. After 5 years, you give one more PPV 23. Is it clear? So, this is if the child is having nephrotic syndrome and the child is unimmunized. What if the child is immunized? That means this much part is already given, right? So, if the child is immunized, listen, if the child is immunized, you are starting from here. If immunized, you don't need to give PCV 13 again. So, you give PPV 23, after 5 years, you give one more PPV 23 because child already has PCV 13 protection. Are you with me? So, this is how you schedule PCV vaccine. Next question is from statistics. Discrete probability distribution that describes probability of a given number of events occurring in a fixed interval of time is known as. This is a repeat question which came many times. Same question came and the answer was always Poisson distribution. Okay. Now, what is A, B and D? A is normal distribution. By the way, what is normal distribution? A distribution which is normal. How does normal appear? You have a peak at the center and 2 tails on both sides. Somewhat like this is normal. Now, what is Gaussian or Gaussian? Some say Gaussian. What is it? Another name for normal distribution. So, this is nothing but normal distribution. Another name for normal distribution. Now, what is binomial distribution? What do you mean by bi? 2. So, as the name indicates, binomial distribution means it is a distribution that you get when you are expecting only 2 outcomes, okay, or 2 possible outcomes. For example, after giving a new treatment, how many patients survived, how many died. So, you have only 2 options, either they survived or they died. Number of successes, failures. So, where only 2 outcomes possible, you get binomial distribution. Are you with me? Now, moving on to MCQs from Poisson distribution. First one we have already seen, which is the definition. That itself is an MCQ. To predict the probability of number of events occurring in a fixed period of time. In a fixed period of time, how many are the number of events likely to happen? Okay. Second, this is usually for rare events. That is also very, very important. We use Poisson distribution, or we get Poisson distribution when you are dealing with rare events. For example, a very simple example. What is the number of meteorites, okay, more than 1 meter diameter, number of, I am talking about meteorites, okay, meteorites which are likely to, more than 1 meter diameter, which are likely to hit Earth between say June 2021 to December 2021. It's rare, right? So, this is an example for Poisson distribution. Number of events which can happen in a fixed period of time, and this is usually for showing rare events where the number will be very less. Okay? So, that is Poisson. Next question is also from statistics. Difference between lowest and highest value in a data distribution is known as A. Quartile range, B. Range, C. Coefficient of variation, D. Variance. What is the answer? Have you got the answer? Keep it in your mind. We'll discuss first. All these four are known by a name. Any idea? All these four are known as measures of dispersion. Now, let's see what it is. You know, any data set can be explained using two parameters. One is measure of central tendency and the next is measure of dispersion. Now, let me just try to explain this using an example. Imagine that I have taken hemoglobin value of say 20 students in a class. So, this is the data set of 20 hemoglobin values of students in a class. So, you will get something like this, you know, all values. Just imagine that I have put 20 dots representing 20 hemoglobin values in a data set. One value will be lying at the center, I would say almost at the center, right? Sometimes 12 or 13 gram. And this central value is known as what? Measure of central tendency. The central value is known as measure of central tendency, or this is what a common man say as on an average. So, the average will always lie at the center. Next MCQ, measure of central tendency can be of three types. Which are they? It can be either mean or median or mode. So, all these three represent central value, the value that is almost at the center of the data set, whereas all the individual values are spread around this on both sides, right? Okay. Now, what is measure of dispersion? Measure of dispersion, measures of dispersion will tell you, as the name indicates, on an average, how much is the dispersion of individual values in the data set around the central value. Average dispersion of individual values in the data set around the central value, that is measures of dispersion. So, these both will together help you to explain or describe the whole of the sample. Now, let us see which are the measures of dispersion. Central tendency we have done. Measures of dispersion are mainly four in number. One is range, second is mean or average deviation, third is standard deviation, and the fourth is interquartile range. Okay. Now, what is range? Which everybody knows, even the common man knows. What is range? Difference between highest and lowest value. Difference between highest and lowest value from here to here, right, in a data set. Now, what is mean deviation? To understand mean deviation and standard deviation as well, I am taking you back to the example that we set. Okay. Now, the central value or mean I am going to write as x dash. Okay, x dash. You want another color to see it better? X dash. And the individual values, those 20 values or 19 hemoglobin values, I am going to write as x1, x2, x3, x4 up to x20 or 90. Okay, x20. I have written. Now, what is deviation? Deviation means it is the distance between the central value and individual value. Okay. So, first deviation would be, that means the distance between the central value, that means the mean and the individual value. So, the first deviation would be x1 minus x dash. Second would be x2 minus x dash, and the last would be x20 minus x dash. X dash is the mean, the value which is lying at the center. Now, what is mean deviation? We were talking about mean deviation, right? What is mean? Average. Now, what is mean deviation? Average of all these deviation is mean deviation. You add all these deviations, okay, summate and then divided by n or 20 will give you mean deviation. Okay. Now, I want to tell you something. See, when you really do this, when you honestly do this, you get 0 as the answer. Why? You always get 0 if you really do this. Why? Mean is lying at the center, right? That means you have equal number of values which are less than mean on one side and equal number of values which are more than mean on the other side. So, if you take the average, they will get cancel out. Okay, you will get equal number of positives and negatives. So, they will cancel out and you will get 0. So, what we do was, to avoid getting that 0, in mean deviation, you are taking modulus. Now, don't ask me what is modulus. You have learned what modulus is in your schools. Modulus, this is modulus, see this. That means you are ignoring sign. Sign is the problem here. So, you are simply ignoring sign, and sigma x minus x dash, sigma means summation, you know it, right? This is summation, you are adding, just in case you forgot. I am not saying you don't know, you forgot. Divided by n, total number of observation. In our example, it would be 20. Okay. So, this is how you get mean deviation. So, this formula is also an MCQ. Nobody will ask you to calculate, but formula is important. Sigma x minus x dash modulus divided by n. Now, there is a problem with this. Here, when you take modulus, what you get would be an approximate answer, right? You won't be getting the real answer because you are neglecting sign. Don't you think that sign is important? You can't just neglect and you can't just approximate, because in the field of medicine, we can't go for approximation, we want real values. So, we are not going to neglect minus sign. We are going to consider it, but somehow we are going to remove it without neglecting. Now, what comes to your mind? Go back to your maths class. How can you remove minus without neglecting? Take the square. Okay, square will make it positive. And then how to take out the effect of the extra square that you put? Take the square root. Okay, that means you take the deviation, square it and then take the square root, and you will get a formula which is nothing but standard deviation. So, this is also deviation only, average deviation of individual values in the data set around your central mean or central value. But here what you do is, you are taking the square and then taking the square root, and that is how you got this formula standard deviation. Hope you are with me. Okay, it's very simple and it's very, very important, the formula especially. And there are few more MCQs from standard deviation. When you compare all the measures of dispersion that we discussed, the most commonly used measure of dispersion is standard deviation. Very, very commonly asked MCQ. I think I have it written here. Yes, standard deviation is the most common measure of dispersion in our medical research. Okay, next MCQ. Very important. Variance equal to standard deviation square. See, variance was there in our option, right? So, variance is nothing but you are taking the square of standard deviation. This is important, not only this relation, but I have seen questions where standard deviation would be given and you will be asked to find out variance, and the other way around. Okay, so variance is square of standard deviation. So, standard deviation would be square root of variance. So, that way you can find out the answer. And the third MCQ from standard deviation is, not third, I would say fourth, because the formula also was a very important MCQ. It is used only in normal distribution. This is very important. Standard deviation can only be used in normal distribution, which we have discussed. How does normal looks? This is normal distribution. You have a peak at the center and two tails of almost equal length on both sides. By the way, what is the opposite of normal? Non-normal. You call it as skewed distribution. Okay. And what is how does a skewed distribution appear? Again, that could be an image based question. In skewed, the peak will be towards one side and tail will be towards the other side. Okay, it can be either like this or it can be like this. Okay, peak will be sometimes towards the left and peak will be sometimes towards the right, something like this. Okay, I will show that skewed once again. See, this is how skewed look like. Okay, one like this and another like this. Okay, and what I want to tell you is, if tail is towards the right, it is known as right-sided skewing. Look at the tail. If tail is towards the right, it is known as a right-sided skewing. And tail is towards the left. By the way, this, you have a peak here and tail here. See, this is what I was planning to draw. You have peak towards the right and tail towards the left. This is known as left-sided skewing. Again, another MCQ. You will be given a skew distribution and you will be asked to find out whether it is right or left. Another MCQ. Right-sided is also known as positive skewing and left-sided is also known as negative skewing. So, those are the MCQs from skewing. Now, the last one is, not the last, third one is interquartile range. Now, what is interquartile range? To understand what is interquartile range, first you should understand what is quartile. Now, what do you mean by quartile? What do you mean by quarter? Quarter means 1/4, right? So, as the name indicates, here first you arrange the data set in the ascending order, then you divide that into, it's a quarter, right? Quarter wise division means 4 equal parts. Now, for dividing something into 4 equal parts, how many points you require? How many points you require? See, for dividing something into 2 equal parts, how many points you require? Just 1 at the center, right? Whereas, for dividing something into 4 equal parts, you require 3 points like this, right? This is how you do it. Is it clear? Look at this. Your first point is known as, or Q1, you divide them into 4 equal parts using 3 points, which are Q1, Q2, Q3. Q1 is known as the first quartile, which divide your data set in the ratio 25:75. That means 25% of values towards one side and rest 75 towards the right side. Q2 is known as second quartile, which divides your data set in the ratio 50:50. Okay, that means this is the middle value. So, this is known as median. That is another MCQ. Okay, Q2 is known as median and Q3 is third quartile. These are also MCQs. What is Q1, what is Q2, what is Q3. So, this divides your data set in the ratio 75:25. That means 25% of values which are less than Q3 towards the left and 25% of values which are more than Q3 towards the right. Now, the question was, what is interquartile? So, we have discussed what is quarter, Q1, Q2, Q3 and their names. Now, the question is, what is interquartile range? Interquartile range is nothing but the distance between Q1 and Q3. Okay, that means Q1 to Q3 is known as, this distance is known as interquartile range, IQR. And what percentage of values in the data set lie between Q1 and Q3 or within interquartile range? Look at this. This 25 and that means 50% of central value. 50% of values lie between Q1 and Q3 or within interquartile range. Are you with me? So, that is also another MCQ. So, that will tell you, that will also tell you about the spread of individual values around the central value. Here the central value is median. Okay, are you with me? Is it clear? Now, the last one. What is coefficient of variation? I think this was your last option, right? Coefficient of variation is, as the name indicates. What do you mean by variation? Variation means change. So, as the name indicates, this is something which will help you to compare changes happening in two different variables. So, that is the first definition, which is your MCQ, to compare the variation or change between two different variables. What do you mean by two different variables? See, usually you compare height with height, weight with weight, blood pressure with blood pressure, BMI with BMI, right? Whereas, coefficient of variation will help you to compare two different things, changes happening, two different things like, height and weight, BMI and IQ, like that. Are you with me? Next MCQ. There is a formula for calculating this, which is standard deviation divided by mean into 100. This is also an MCQ. What is the formula of coefficient of variation? Now, I will tell you what it is. Just imagine that I have introduced, a company has introduced a new formula drink for children. Or else let's consider an example which is familiar to everyone, which is that magical drink that claims to make children taller, stronger and sharper. Yeah, you got it, Horlicks, right? No comments about that tagline, I am not going into it, but let's consider for the time being that those children who take Horlicks will have an increase in height, weight and IQ. Now, as a doctor, I want to know whether the change in height is more or change in weight is more after taking Horlicks. Okay, here I can make use of coefficient of variation, changes. I am going to compare changes. I am not going into the details, but just listen and try to understand what it is. I take a group of children with almost equal height and weight, divide them into two halves. One half is to know the change in height and the other is for measuring change in weight. To both I give Horlicks and I follow them for say 3 or 6 months, and at the end of 6th month, from the first group intended to measure the change in weight, I will take the standard deviation in weight and mean weight and I calculate coefficient of variation in weight by substituting those values, and from the second group I calculate coefficient of variation in height by calculating standard deviation and mean height from the second group at the end of 6th month. Okay, and I will get some value. Okay, suppose I got the answer as coefficient of variation in weight say was 30% and coefficient of variation in height was say 10%. I got these values when I found it or when I substituted. Now, what do you mean by this? That is also very important. What do you mean by this? This means that definitely there is a change in both height and weight after taking Horlicks, but the change in weight is more than change in height, almost 3 times increase in weight than height. Are you with me? So, this is coefficient of variation, the formula, and very important. So, the answer for this question is range. That shows the difference between highest and lowest value. Next question is from epidemiology, from study design part. Best quantitative method to study previous research studies is, any guess? The answer is actually meta-analysis. Let's see what is meta-analysis. What is it? Meta, as the name indicates. What do you mean by meta, or what do you mean by metamorphosis? Metamorphosis means changing from one form to another, right? So, as the name indicates, here also you are collecting previous research and you are changing it to something else. So, that way you can remember meta-analysis. A very simple example, just imagine that I want to do a study to know the complications of hypertension among Indian population using a meta-analysis. I know that I am not the first person who is going to do this study. Many people have already done a lot of research in the same field. So, here what I do is I will simply sit at home. Then through internet and journal, I will try to collect all those studies which were done previously in the same topic. I will combine them, then I will come up with a new result. This is meta-analysis. Okay. So, the definition is systematically combining the results of previous research to arrive at a conclusion. And how will you come to that conclusion? After doing a statistical analysis. So, you collect all the data, then you do a statistical analysis with data collected from all the other research which was done on the same topic, and then you come up with a new result. This is meta-analysis. So, what you want to keep in your mind is, in meta-analysis, you are not directly collecting data from the patient. Instead, you are collecting studies which were done previously and you are transforming them or metamorphosing them to something else, something new. Okay? There is a picture which shows meta-analysis. Here it is written meta-analysis, but in your MCQ only this will be given, and that means only the picture will be given and the question will be what study design is it? It is meta-analysis because you are collecting various studies and you are combining it. What is systematic review then? This is also somewhat similar to meta-analysis. The first step is what you do in meta-analysis. Here as well, you are collecting studies which were done on that particular topic from previous studies done. You are collecting those previous studies, and at the end you are simply describing them, like 25% of studies said that this is the common complication, 60% said this is the common complication, like that. You are simply describing without any statistical analysis, no statistical analysis done. No statistical analysis. Did you understand? See, what I want to tell you is, in both systematic analysis and meta-analysis, you are collecting previous studies which were done. In statistical analysis, you are combining them by using some statistics. That is, you are really doing analysis. That is why it is known as meta-analysis. You are analyzing or you are doing statistical analysis. Whereas in systematic review, after collecting, you are simply describing without any statistical analysis. You are simply reading and said, you are saying, okay, 50% said like this, some 20% of studies said these are the complications like this. You are simply describing, no statistical analysis. So that is the difference. Next is an image based question from study designs. What is it? What you see here is a pyramid in which various study designs are arranged, right? This is known as evidence pyramid. This is evidence pyramid. Now, what is the specialty of this? As you climb up the pyramid, the strength of evidence that you get from each study design increases. Okay. So, at the bottom you have animal research, then you have expert opinion, then you have case report, case series, case control, cohort is a better study design, then you have RCT, systematic review, and which one you have at the top? See, our own meta-analysis, because that will give you the maximum evidence or most powerful evidence. Because of which meta-analysis is known as, that is the next MCQ, meta-analysis is also known as gold standard study design. Gold standard study design. That is why I said this is the best, because that is occupying the topmost position in the evidence pyramid. Gold standard study design. That is also an MCQ. Now what you see here, this is another image based question. This is the diagrammatic representation of the results in meta-analysis, and the question is, what do you call it? Nobody will ask you to interpret the result. The question that I have seen in previous MCQ is, what is the name? See, this is a meta-analysis combining odds ratio of various studies. There are 5 studies. I am not going into the details. Just see that these squares represent the value that you get from individual study, and this is the final result or the final summary result that you got after combining all the odds ratio. And you have some tails here, okay, which represent the values you have within the bracket. Okay. Now, all these tails looks like woods in a forest, right? Suppose I have 20, 30 studies combined, and when I plot like this, all these will look like a thick dense forest. Yes, it will look like a thick dense forest, because of which this is known as forest plot. That is the reason why you call it as forest plot, guys, because of this forest like appearance. This is known as forest plot. So if you see this picture, there can be 2 MCQs. One, what is it? It is a forest plot. This is for which study design? Meta-analysis. Are you with me? Coming to the last part from meta-analysis, which is again a frequently asked MCQ. What is the drawback of meta-analysis? It's not free of drawback. It has its own drawback. It is known as publication bias. Now, what do you mean by publication bias? What do you mean by bias? Bias means it's an error. And as the name indicates, it's an error that you come across when you study only published result. What is the problem with published result? See, when you start, or any researcher, when he start doing a study, he'll be very enthusiastic to find out a lot of things. But at the end, usually what happens is you end up in getting nothing. Okay, for majority, this is what happens. Then you will just, when you don't get something that you expect, you simply discard the study. You don't want to talk about it. But just imagine that you get a positive result. Then you will immediately publish it, right? So that people will come to know about you, you get fame, you get money. Okay, so most often the published studies will be giving you only positive result. Okay, so when you do a study by simply collecting published data, you will be getting one-sided result. Do you agree with me? That is known as publication bias, which is a drawback of meta-analysis. Okay, so these are the MCQs. And the answer is meta-analysis, because that is the best method. Now, systematic analysis that we have, systematic review we have seen. Now, what is survey? Survey is an example for cross-sectional study. You are taking a cross-section, you are doing a survey and you are getting cross-section at one point of time, and you get to know what is happening in that population at that point. So, it is cross-sectional study. And group interview is not a quantitative method. Don't think too much, just understand that it is a qualitative method. Qualitative method of study. Example would be doing focus group discussion, FGDs. Okay, so that's coming under group interview. Answer is meta-analysis, and these are the MCQs which you can expect from the options, is what I meant to say. Next question is from The topic vaccines. Heat sensitive substance or device present on the vaccine to monitor the viability is, what is it? I will show you that device. This is the device they are talking about. What is it? This is vaccine vial monitor. Vaccine vial monitor, or in short known as VVM. Now what is VVM? As you see in this picture, there is a white square which is kept inside a blue circle, and it is likely to change. This white square is sensitive to heat and it changes its color like this to a darker shade. Okay, so this is before heat exposure and this is what happens after excessive heat exposure. Now depending upon the color of the white, we have VVMs. We have classified VVMs into 4 stages like this. What you see first is stage 1. In stage 1, it is very white. In stage 2, this is stage 2. Here, the inside white has become little darker, but it is less darker than the outside blue color. That is stage 2. Now, what is stage 3? This is even more darker and this has become as blue as the outside blue color. That means the inside and outside have become same color. That is stage 3. Now what is possible? The white square inside will become darker than the outside blue. That is stage 4 of VVM. Okay, so these are the 4 things that you can see in any vial when you look at the vaccine vial monitor. Now this will help you to understand whether it is viable. That means the vaccine inside is viable or not. That means whether it can be used or you need to discard it. So which among these will you use? This picture itself is an MCQ regarding stages. And next MCQ, which all you can use. You know, stage 1 and stage 2 you can use. This can be used. Whereas stage 3 and stage 4 you cannot use, discard. So such vaccine vials you should not be using for giving immunization. Are you with me? Okay. Now where all will you find VVM? Not only on the label as you think, it can also be found on the septum or above the neck, that conical tip above the neck of an ampule. So these are the places where you usually find VVM. This was a previous MCQ, this picture. Okay, and this is stage 1, this is 2, this is 3, this is 4. These 2 can be used and these 2 cannot be used, right? Now I am going to tell you something new, not very new, but relatively new. You know, now we have 4 types of VVM. I am not talking about the stages. There are 4 types of VVM, which are VVM 2, VVM 7, VVM 14 and VVM 30. Now what are these numbers? These numbers represent the number of days taken by VVM to reach discard point when exposed to temperature more than 37 degrees Celsius continuously. That means when exposed to 37 degrees Celsius, that means our normal room temperature, how many days this will take to reach the discard point. That is given by these numbers. Okay. Now what do you mean by 2 VVM2? That means if it is exposed to, if you keep it outside in 2 days, this vial should be disposed. This here it means 7, 14, 30 days. This can be kept for 30 days. And depending on this, we have given VVM2 for least stable vaccines. For least stable vaccines, you give VVM2. Now what is VVM7? That is given for moderate stable vaccine, moderately stable vaccine. VVM14 is for medium and VVM30 highest, okay, that is high stability. So high stability vaccines will be given VVM30, medium stability 14, moderate stability vaccine 7 and the least stable ones will be given VVM2. These are the MCQs from vaccine vial monitor. We have covered everything. Answer is VVM. Next question. The following disease has highest mortality after clinical manifestation develop. Which one has got highest mortality? How do you know which one has got highest mortality? By calculating case fatality rate. Okay, so that brings you to the next question. What is case fatality rate? Out of total people who got a disease, how many died? So what is the formula? Very important. Number of deaths due to a particular disease divided by number of cases of same disease into 100. So that will tell you what percentage died because of one particular disease, right? Okay, next MCQ from case fatality rate. This will tell you about the virulence of the disease causing organism, right? Next MCQ, this is related to the killing power of the disease. This is related to the killing power of a disease. Both are favorite MCQs. Now let's see CFR of all these 4 diseases which were there in the option. Even otherwise you know the answer, but let's see what are the CFR of each of this. For H1N1, case fatality rate is 41%. That means 41%, around 41% who get the disease die. Nipah, it is 80 to 90%, very high, right? Ebola, it's around 50%. These are, approximate values which have come in various journals. And for rabies, it's invariably 100%. Only very negligible may survive. So you can consider it as 100% case fatality rate. So which one has got highest mortality? It is rabies. Next question is from the topic communicable disease. Transplacental transmission with microcephaly is seen in rubella virus infection, Zika virus infection, CMV, parvovirus. What is the answer? See, it is based on this picture. Here the picture is not clear. I'll show you a clearer picture. This is the picture. Now what do you see in this picture? See, a mosquito is biting pregnant lady, and that is how the virus is entering and it is causing microcephaly. So what is the answer? Zika virus, which is transmitted through mosquito bites, which can cause microcephaly in pregnant women. Now I would say, had this mosquito been not there in that picture, if this was not the picture, I am sure you would have gone confused, right? Because rubella virus can also cause microcephaly, and congenital CMV infection can also cause microcephaly, right? Didn't you know that? So this is correct answer only because that picture was there with a mosquito biting a pregnant woman. I think at least for a few, they might be thinking ignorance is bliss. So for those who know that the other conditions can also cause microcephaly, they would have really gone confused without this picture. Now let's see. And what about parvovirus? Parvovirus usually affects animals like dogs and cattle. So it's not a concern. What really concern is A, B and C, which cause microcephaly. Let's see the MCQs from Zika virus infection. Why it is known as Zika? Because this was first identified in Zika forest in Uganda, okay? And it is caused by the mosquito. Which mosquito? Aedes mosquito bite. That is another MCQ, Aedes mosquito bite. Okay. Now what about the clinical features? Usually this doesn't cause much of clinical features. It simply comes as a prodromal symptoms like with fever, myalgia and such things, and it will go off without anyone noticing. But the problem comes when this affects a pregnant woman, causing microcephaly to the newborn child. And what you see here is an MRI finding. See, this is normal and this is microcephaly. Okay, so radio imaging of microcephaly. Now let's see what are the routes of transmission. 2 we have already discussed. 1 through mosquito bites, Aedes mosquito, and the next is from mother to child, which is vertical transmission. Are there any other routes? Yes, there is a sexual route of transmission, and the 4th is through blood transfusion. So these are the 4 methods by which you can get Zika virus. Okay. Now what do you see here? Rajasthan on alert as 55 people test positive for Zika virus in Jaipur. This came in Indian Express. Now why I wanted to show this is because this was a previous question. Which of the following diseases are not seen in India? Zika also was there and Zika was not the answer there. Okay, because Zika is already there in India. That is what I wanted to tell you. We have identified Zika in India as well. Okay, lot of cases in India. Now coming to the next one, congenital rubella syndrome. It's known as, it produces triad, right? What is a triad? Affects eye, affects ear and heart as well. Okay, eye, ear and heart. In the eye, what does it cause? Congenital cataract. It causes congenital cataract. Eye, what happens in a child who is born with congenital rubella syndrome? Sensory neural deafness, right? Sensory neural deafness. And what happens to heart of the child? It causes PDA. PDA, this is the triad. Okay, also pulmonary artery stenosis. Okay, pulmonary artery stenosis is also possible. Pulmonary artery stenosis is also possible. Now, what else can happen? Microcephaly is also possible. Okay, this is what I said. Even congenital rubella syndrome can also cause microcephaly. What about congenital cytomegalovirus infection? That can also cause microcephaly. What are the other symptoms? Low birth weight, seizures, hepatosplenomegaly, such things can also happen in CMV infection. Okay, now I will show you another picture. This is an image based question. Look at it and what is the answer? Now what you see here is an image based question. What is your answer? Clue is, this is also a congenital condition. What do you see here, by the way? Upper incisors, which are, the clue is peck shaped, centrally notched. I'll show you one more picture, you will definitely answer. What is it? This is mulberry tooth. What you see here is mulberry tooth. So, this picture is nothing but Hutchinson's teeth. Okay. So, it's seen in congenital syphilis, guys. Okay. So, this is something that you see in Hutchinson's teeth, that you see in congenital syphilis. Again, you can expect as an image based question. Here also you have a triad, right? What is a triad? This triad is connecting eye, ear and tooth or teeth. So, on eye, what happens? In congenital syphilis, interstitial keratitis, sensory neural deafness and Hutchinson's teeth. So, that is also triad. Okay. Moving on to the next question. This question is from nutrition. Highest thermic effect is seen in. What is the answer? Carbohydrate diet, protein diet, fat diet, vitamin diet. First, let's see what is thermic effect. Then we will see the answers. What is thermic effect of food? Means, as the name indicates, thermic effect is caused by food. That means, when you take food, your body temperature increases. Okay, this is also known as specific dynamic action of food. Specific dynamic action of food. That means increase in metabolic rate after ingestion of a meal. When you eat a meal, the calorie in the meal is used for your basic metabolic action as well as for processing the food. You use calorie, like for digestion, absorption and storage, and part of it during this process is converted to heat. So, that raises your body temperature. Okay. Now, the thermic effect is not the same for all diet that you take. It depends upon what is the nutrient inside. And it is said that highest thermic effect or thermogenic effect is possible with proteins. They say around 30% of your protein food converts to converts to heat. Then carbohydrate, it is some 20%, and then comes fat, around 5% only converted to heat. So, what is the answer? Highest thermic effect is for protein diet. Yes, especially animal protein. When you eat animal protein, your body temperature increases. My grandma used to tell me when I was small, she advised me not to take chicken during summer season. She said, or she believed that it increases the body temperature. Now I know it really does, because non-veg has got more of protein and that has got maximum thermic effect. Okay. Last question. Again an image based question from communicable disease. Life cycle image of an organism is given below. Identify it. From the picture that you see in this slide, it is difficult to identify. I will show you a clearer picture which I have downloaded of the same image. Now what is it? See, in the exam, the image which came in the exam, these names were not written, only the pictures. Okay, now don't try to read what is there, just look at the picture and tell me what are the clues which suggest you towards the disease. What do you see here? You have a rodent, okay, rat is there, then dog is there and urine, okay, urine of rat and dog. It is contaminating the water as well as soil. Then poor man is coming in contact with this water contaminated with urine of these animals and he is getting the disease. Okay, so this is suggestive of leptospirosis which you get through the water which is contaminated with urine of animals. Now let us see the MCQs from leptospirosis. You know it already. See, when you see an image, the image that I showed you, these animals and urine and the water bodies give the clue towards leptospirosis. Suppose you are getting it as a statement, they will definitely mention, I guess, they have to mention about animal urine and or animal contact. There will be a history of animal contact or animal urine and the symptoms, okay, the classical symptoms suggestive of leptospirosis. So many others are there, but classical symptoms are fever will be there, myalgia, especially calf muscle tenderness, then conjunctival redness and jaundice. So if you see this combination, go for leptospirosis as the diagnosis. And the severe form of leptospirosis, if untreated, you call it as Weil's disease, where both the kidney as well as liver are affected. Almost every organs are affected in Weil's disease. Now, how to diagnose? There are many ways, but the gold standard test, which is again an MCQ, is, see, each and everything that we have discussed in this are MCQs. Okay, don't ignore anything. Everything is important. MAT, what is it? Microscopic agglutination test. Though we say this is the gold standard, in hospitals we usually use IgM ELISA for diagnosis. That is also another thing that we have, but gold standard is MAT. Drug of choice for treatment is penicillin if the patient is IP. If the patient is OP, we usually treat him with doxycycline 100 milligram BD. And is there any prophylactic drug for leptospirosis? Yes, we have a chemoprophylaxis which is again doxycycline. For those who are going for NREG work, you are giving doxycycline because they are likely to get leptospirosis. And what is the dose? 200 mg weekly. This is the dose. Every week. Take one tablet every week. So when do you start? You have to start 2 days before the exposure and you continue till the exposure ends. Take it every week, 200 milligram tab. Now what about hantavirus? Hantavirus also, it causes handapulmonary syndrome. This is also transmitted through animals, especially rodents. Okay, but this is not through water. This is transmitted as airborne. There is no specific treatment or vaccine available for Hanta. And there is one more MCQ from hantavirus which came previously. This virus is managed in BSL-4 labs only. That means biosafety level should be 4. I hope you know we have BSL 1, 2, 3, 4 and the highest is BSL 4. So this is managed in BSL or this virus should be isolated in BSL 4 labs. That was a previous MCQ. The next option we had in that was Yersinia pestis. What is it causing? It causes plague, right? Next is an image based question. This is how Yersinia pestis looks like. They are rod shaped bacilli, right? Okay. Next question. Which is the vector involved in plague? It's a flea. Which flea? rat flea. Here also rats are involved. Okay. In Handa as well as in the other one and in Yersinia, there are rats involved. And what is the name of this? Okay, here you can see an image based question of rat flea. Next question, what is the name of this? Xenopsilla cheopsis. Xenopsilla cheopsis is the name of the rat flea. And the last was about rickettsial diseases, or rickettsia was the last option, right? So, these are the types of rickettsial diseases. I am not going into the details. When you have time, just go through this table once again. We do not have time to discuss everything, but the frequently asked MCQs from rickettsial disease, the first one is scrub typhus caused by, that is the first question, Oriental Suzugamushi, and the vector involved is mite. That is one favorite MCQ. Next MCQ is regarding Q fever. In Q fever, it is caused by Coxiella burnetii. Okay. And next MCQ is, which is a vector? No vector is involved in Q fever. That is a favorite question. In which of the following rickettsial diseases vector is not involved? It is Q fever. Then how do you get the disease? It's airborne. Okay, it's affecting the lungs mainly. So, it's airborne. There is one more MCQ from Q fever. This is the only rickettsial fever where skin lesions are absent. In all others, you get some sort of skin lesion somewhere, some rash or something. Whereas in this, no skin lesion. Next MCQ is regarding trench fever, which is the vector involved. It is louse. So, these are the MCQs that usually come from rickettsial diseases. Okay. So, here the answer is leptospirosis. So, that brings us to the end of the MCQ discussion from INI CET 2020 questions from community medicine. So, thank you guys for your patient listening. We have gone through almost all chapters and topics. So, I think you could brush up all your memory, and definitely this will help you for scoring marks in the coming exam. So, all the best, take care, do well, and thank you very much.